Vamos a dar inicio a los trabajos de la sesión de Desafección a la Democracia. Gracias por acompañarnos aquí el día de hoy. Mi nombre es Sol Sánchez. Soy la oficial a cargo del Programa de Gobernanza Efectiva y Democracia en la Oficina del Programa de las Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo en México. Como ven, la dinámica es un poco distinta, el montaje de la sala es diferente. Aprovechando que es después de la comida, queremos hacer las cosas un poco más dinámicas para que todos podamos expresar nuestras opiniones y nos llevemos recomendaciones que pueda implementar la red. La idea es tener una primera sesión de más o menos media hora en la que nuestros expertos nos contarán un poco sobre cuestiones de desafección democrática. Después pasaremos a un taller muy breve de 40 minutos en 3 mesas diferentes. Más adelante les explicaremos un poco más la dinámica. Y finalmente, en los últimos 20 minutos, los relatores de cada una de las mesas presentarán las recomendaciones y las conclusiones por cada uno de los temas. Como una muy breve introducción, todos sabemos que existe un consenso internacional en entender que la corrupción es una amenaza para la estabilidad y la seguridad de las sociedades, pues esta compromete el desarrollo sostenible y el imperio de la ley. Así es como lo reconoce la Convención de las Naciones Unidas contra la Corrupción y sus 186 estados parte. En la actualidad, la corrupción representa uno de los grandes problemas que enfrentan los gobiernos a nivel global, porque ésta socava las capacidades de los estados en su labor de aseguramiento del goce de los derechos humanos. Estamos atravesando una coyuntura global en la que los sentimientos anticorrupción vienen incrementando y afectando percepciones y valoraciones de la fórmula de la democracia, y que como sistema que garantiza y promulga el bien común de la ciudadanía. La democracia está siendo percibida por los ciudadanos y las ciudadanas como un sistema que está siendo poco eficiente para satisfacer sus necesidades y poco efectivo para generar oportunidades para todas las personas. En este sentido, pues no está consiguiendo promover la redistribución de los mínimos que asegurarían derechos civiles, como las libertades individuales, los derechos sociales, las libertades de acceso al bienestar económico, social y cultural, e incluso los derechos políticos, como libertades de participación en el ejercicio del poder y la toma de decisiones. Esto claramente es un problema para la estabilidad de los países y por eso es que decidimos tener este panel en la red, y para el desarrollo sostenible además, ya que la corrupción afecta particularmente a las personas en situación de pobreza e incrementa las desigualdades, y afecta especialmente de manera desproporcionada a las mujeres. Esto se ha comprobado en los últimos años debido a que son mucho más vulnerables a los impactos de la corrupción. En ese sentido, desde el PNUD trabajamos en la lucha contra la corrupción como un imperativo global sobre el que se basa el logro de todos los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, esta gran agenda global con 17 objetivos y 169 metas. En uno de estos objetivos, el número 16, está arraigado en los derechos humanos y destaca la importancia de fortalecer las instituciones y la gobernanza en nuestro compromiso como sociedad global de no dejar a nadie atrás. El cumplimiento de la Agenda 2030 depende en gran parte del éxito de las políticas de transparencia y anticorrupción. Consideramos que estas son aceleradoras para el cumplimiento del desarrollo sostenible. También el fortalecimiento de las instituciones de justicia y la inversión en desarrollo de marcos regulatorios de control, así como medidas de aseguramiento del acceso a la justicia y de mecanismos que apunten a la transparencia y que faciliten la vigilancia y auditoría ciudadana, son cruciales entre los aspectos a atender desde el Estado para mitigar los impactos de la corrupción. Esto resulta especialmente importante en el contexto en el que nos ubicamos, en la justicia electoral, ya que amerita una atención, análisis y un enfoque particular que considere el ciclo electoral completo y permita dimensionar los efectos de la corrupción en los procesos electorales y las medidas que desde el punto de vista jurídico puedan promoverse. En este sentido, esta mesa de trabajo se propone generar un espacio de diálogo y reflexión que permita ahondar los efectos de la corrupción en los procesos electorales. Como les comentaba, en un primer momento vamos a escuchar a nuestros expertos en cuanto a tendencias y desafíos que en materia de legislación electoral experimentan las autoridades electorales para atender los temas de integridad, las soluciones emergentes que desde la innovación y el uso de nuevas tecnologías están en el debate, para sumar a los procesos electorales y también una mirada desde la sociedad civil y cómo las percepciones que se tienen de la democracia y los procesos electorales están afectando la participación ciudadana. Estas perspectivas nos ilustrarán situaciones que propician o mitigan el fenómeno de la desafección democrática y así profundizaremos en un segundo momento en pequeños grupos de trabajo para debatir y compartir visiones al tema, ofreciendo recomendaciones concretas para los trabajos que promueve la Red Mundial de Justicia Electoral. Con esto cierro la introducción y cedo la palabra a Niall McCann. Él es gerente de proyectos de la Oficina para el Apoyo de Políticas y Programas del Programa de las Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo de nuestra oficina en Nueva York, maestro en Relaciones Internacionales y Asuntos Internacionales por la Universidad de Limerick en Irlanda, y sus áreas de principal conocimiento son política, asistencia electoral, derecho electoral y observación electoral. Gracias, Niall.
Thank you very much, colleagues. It's really wonderful to be back again at the Global Network. Last year's event was wonderful. This one is also. And I really hope we can end up in this particular session coming up with some really, really interesting recommendations for the Global Network as a whole. Practical recommendations, really looking forward on matters related to new technologies, law, and on citizenship. Let me just say a few words then on a couple of those different. It sounds like it's working. Just on some technology issues first. I think we will all accept that these days there tends to be two main themes around use of technology or new technologies in the electoral process. One is the whole social media, digital platforms, debate and issue. But the other issue, of course, that's been hanging around now for a number of years has been the whole issue about electronic voting and how likely that is to become even more prevalent around the world. What are the drawbacks? And ultimately, is it going to lead towards internet voting, which there is clearly a demand for among some segments of the population, younger sections of the population in particularly more advanced democracies. Let me just say on this issue then first, the United Nations in general does not have a particular view that it will tell member states whether it is a good idea or bad idea to bring new technologies into the electoral process and in particular electronic voting systems. I think it is fairly safe to say we have something of a healthy skepticism about the potential of electronic voting to combat matters related to a lack of confidence and lack of trust in electoral processes and electoral administrations. One thing I think we find it difficult to get away from is the fact that if a polling station official wishes to commit some form of corrupt activity or some form of electoral fraud, there really is very little difference between marking 200 pieces of paper with a pencil and pushing a button on a screen 200 times. We don't see much of a difference there. When you think about it, it's pretty hard to commit polling fraud without the acquiescence or without the support of polling staff. It's largely polling staff that commit electoral fraud in polling stations. And if polling staff want to commit fraud, I'm not sure that machines are going to stop them from doing it, even in cases where some electoral management bodies have introduced biometric systems to verify the identity of voters on polling day, meaning voters not only are registered to vote biometrically, but then they have to also give their thumbprint to turn up on polling day to actually receive their ballot. We know of cases where there have been political leaders have lined the voters up one after the other. Please sign in with your thumb, but give us the ballot paper, or sign in with your thumb, but we're going to push the button on the screen for you. So we're a little bit skeptical about that whole issue. And in fact, I think it's fairly safe to say that, well, this is my own personal view. We're not surprised that electronic voting has not caught on more in the last number of years than it would reasonably have been expected to. I mean, the first machines that were used in countries like India and indeed in this part of the world, in countries like Venezuela over the last number of years, really, there's not that many countries around the world, in particular what would be considered older democracies, that have actually embraced fully electronic systems now in terms of touch screens or any other form of electronic votings in polling stations. And I'm not quite sure that it's going to get much more prevalent in the coming years. I think where the demand is going to be this. The demand is going to be for online voting or internet-based voting, where young people in particular are going to say, why do I have to walk to the polling station? Why do I have to stand in line? Why do I have to wait, etc., to push a button on a screen, which frankly doesn't really speed up the process of voting very much over traditional paper voting. And I think the demand is going to be for a greater amount of internet-based voting. And before we all think, well, that, everyone has talked about the pluses and minuses of voting in uncontrolled environments. We can't be sure that it's the voter themselves that's actually casting the ballot. We can't be sure that the voter isn't doing so, not being intimidated by somebody standing over them to make sure that they're voting the way they're instructed to vote. Yes, we're aware of all of those challenges. And when you think about it, the only country still that's doing this now regularly for national level elections, Estonia. The main reason why it has worked in Estonia is not necessarily because their technology is better than any other countries, and it's not necessarily because the system is more secure in Estonia than it could be in any other country. It's largely around the fact that there's complete trust in the national identity system in that country, the digital national identity card system. There's complete trust and confidence in the accuracy of that system, and therefore people have a certain respect and trust that the electoral process that is facilitated voting online by the digital ID system, that electoral process is credible. So any member state that's thinking, well, let's just forget about e-voting in polling stations, let's move straight to online phone-based or laptop-based voting should really keep that point in mind, that if you do not have confidence and credibility in the voter register, then we have a major challenge in ensuring the credibility and the integrity of the electoral process. One thing I do think that's going to happen, though, in the event that there's an increase in internet-based voting in the coming years, I think there's going to be one development that really could be a little bit concerning, which is that the more people get used to potentially voting at home via a laptop or via a smart device, the more they will want to do it. And the more that they will want to do it beyond simply casting a vote for a national parliament or a president once every couple of years. And in fact, you have noticed in the last number of years an increased demand for direct democracy methods in many parts of the developed world now, where voters want referenda. We want a referendum on this, we want a referendum on Brexit, we want a referendum to ratify trade agreements signed between the European Union. In Canada, for God's sake, we want more and more referenda and direct democracy. And on the face of things, that does sound attractive, right? Gives more power to the people's voice is heard more, there's no filtering out, there's no disaffection of people only being able to cast a ballot once every 4 years or once every 6 years or whatever. It sounds a very attractive thing. Let's get people voting more and more regularly on more and more issues that affect their daily lives. That's the positive side. The downside of it is if you think that part of the growth in populism and part of the rejection of traditional political parties in the last number of years has been because of these administrative, in the language of populist leaders, because of this administrative class, this elite, bureaucratic, deep state, etc., that have lost touch with the people. If that's your motivation for saying, I want more control over my life via voting, via direct democracy methods, then I'm really not sure how far off we are from political leaders taking advantage of that kind of motivation and that kind of political atmosphere in a country to say, you know what, I want to achieve things with my political platform that the experts tell me are a bad idea, but I'm going to take it straight to the people. For example, things like the exchange rate, the interest rate? Who are these elite administrative central bankers sitting in their offices that don't know anything about how people live their lives on a daily basis? Who are they to tell us how to run our country, etc., etc.? That type of populist messaging and that type of populist sentiment could actually be facilitated more by online voting and more direct democracy methods. And I would like to think that's something perhaps we can discuss in our working group when we break up in a few minutes. Related also to that issue on social media side of things, regulation or not of digital media platforms, the UN has not yet come up with any guidance on this issue for member states. I think we should have by now. I think we should have at least published something that addressed this issue, but frankly, it changes so fast as well at the same time. We've only very, very recently seen the policy as articulated by the Facebook chief executive the last couple of weeks with his speech in Georgetown about the issue of not censoring or not cancelling speeches by political leaders. And indeed, in many ways, the reaction, shall we say, of Twitter to say, actually, we are going to ban paid political advertising by candidates on our platform leading up to elections. So the field is changing quickly also, and that's perhaps why, one of the reasons why the UN has not issued any guidance. But we are working with UNESCO at the moment. UNESCO, the United Nations social cultural organization that does have a strong role training journalists around the world on matters related to electoral processes. And we are putting together a publication that will be ready in the very, very early part of 2020 that should at least provide some form of toolkit or toolbox to electoral management bodies around the world on how to address this thorny issue of regulation or not of social media platforms in particular within electoral campaign periods and leading up to elections. Dealing with all of the myriad things that we've been discussing that was presented yesterday in some of the presentations by the social media platforms, including paid influencing from abroad, outside of the jurisdiction of any electoral law or any electoral management body. And indeed raising, of course, the larger question, should it in fact be electoral administrators that have any kind of a role in policing or not media or social media platforms during elections? Should it indeed be the role of electoral judicial bodies to be adjudicating or policing this sort of thing? Is it not more appropriate for it to be media commissions and media regulators in countries that are dealing with this issue? So that's the guidance we will have from the UN in the next couple of months. Moving then, related to, on quickly, just to issues of integrity around judicial electoral justice bodies. One thing certainly that I have found over the years in countries that we've worked in many parts of the world is that it is usually, as much as possible, a good idea to keep as much things out of the court system as possible when it comes to adjudicating electoral disputes. Whatever can be solved via informal dispute resolution mechanisms is usually a good thing, and that can often be enhanced and strengthened via the empowering of civil society liaison committees within electoral management bodies, and frankly, in particular, political party liaison committees, political party consultative forums under the auspices either of the electoral management bodies themselves or of electoral dispute resolution adjudicators. There are countless cases of minor issues. I recall debates and arguments between political parties in some countries about whether photographs should appear on the ballot paper. Political parties that were ready to tear each other apart within the electoral campaign, but they both wanted the photographs on the ballot paper, and the Electoral Commission had said there will be no photographs. But by coming together in a forum that the Electoral Commission itself chaired, this issue was thrashed out, where the Electoral Commission listens to both sides and says, okay, you both want it, let's put the photographs back on. That's a way to empower political parties where they're not competing against each other, where we can find common ground between what they all want in a way that is communicated clearly and scheduled with the electoral administrators, and it's possible to overcome some challenges. So finally, on the issue of what more could electoral adjudicators or dispute resolution mechanisms do to boost their own integrity or have their work valued more and have the people believe that the electoral adjudication process itself is has integrity or has even more integrity. I've often felt and seen in the last couple of years electoral judges and electoral tribunals having to judge on matters related to computer software and the opaque nature of computer software used in results management systems. This is not the job of judges. This is not the job of electoral tribunal people. But if it unfortunately ends up where they are the ones that have to decide, well, these bodies have to be resourced properly. They have to have enough full-time, dedicated administrative staff that are additionally provided to them around the time of elections, both before and after. And somehow they have to have access to enough independent expertise that allows them to bring in outside experts that are experts on things like software used to process electoral results. And perhaps that kind of a role of having more independent expertise is something that the Global Network of Electoral Justice or other electoral administrators can assist more with, more structured, more automatically. When it comes to administrative staff, let me say this finally, we all know of ways to assist integrity building when people see, for example, electoral adjudicators, electoral tribunals issuing statements in multiple languages, in minority languages as well as majority languages, in going all over the country, in not just sitting in the capital city, but going out to provinces and regions and speaking to the people out there, in adjudicating cases in public, potentially even having ways that can speed up the processing of electoral disputes, such as, for example, how about automated case management systems that allow electoral complaints, particularly ones that do not have any basis in law at all, when they're submitted, for software systems to be able to automatically reject them if they are outside the terms of the electoral law. You can't have a situation like we've had in countries like Afghanistan, where an electoral body has got 48 hours or 72 hours or a week to judge on 40,000 complaints related to polling day activity on the day. That kind of a law doesn't help electoral tribunals and electoral dispute mechanism adjudicators, and we need to be able to embrace new technologies in a ways that potentially can deal with some of those issues as they arise. I think I should stop at this point. Looking forward to our discussion in the table.
Muchas gracias, Niall. Muy interesante la postura y creo que le diste justo al punto de el papel de la confianza de las y los votantes y su vinculación con la desafección democrática. Y también creo que nos das un punto muy interesante a discutir ahora que nos reunamos en grupos, dado que la mayoría de nuestros colegas vienen de tribunales electorales, esta parte de ir por las vías informales en lugar de las judiciales para este tipo de disputas, creo que nos puede servir bastante como una pregunta detonadora y un punto de partida. A continuación, tengo el gusto de presentar a Jeffrey Staton. Él es director del Programa Judicial para Variedades de Democracia, doctor y maestro en Ciencias Políticas por la Universidad de Washington en San Luis y licenciado en Ciencias Políticas por la Universidad de Richmond. Su área de especialización es construcción política de sistemas judiciales influyentes. Jeffrey, adelante.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Basically, what I'd like to do is give you a few snapshots of a couple pieces of data that come out of some of the work that the Varieties of Democracy Project has done, but also some of the work that's done by colleagues that work on the Americas Barometer, for example, as a way of starting to frame with just a couple pieces of information some of the things we'll be talking about over the next hour. I'll say a little bit more about VDEM in about an hour from now, but I thought it might be useful to just say a couple things about what this thing is so that you understand where the information's coming from. Varieties of Democracy Project is an international collaboration of, depending on how you count, somewhere between 50 and 3,000 scholars working in every country of the world. Primarily, there are four sort of goals. One is to provide transparent and academically rigorous measurement of many features of democratic and autocratic regimes related to many concepts of democracy. Second is to drive research on the on democratic outcomes so that we can understand and explain what we're observing. Third is to help provide policymakers and advocates around the world with data to help inform evidence-based decision-making. And fourth, and this I will stress, is really the project is about an invitation to collaborate in an interdisciplinary way on shared problems in our world. And so there's just a very large network of scholars who work in a lot of different contexts, some of which are inside the VDEM network and some of which are not, that are available to work on projects if you find a need for some kind of collaboration. So as I say, what I'd like to do, I was asked to think about a couple questions. One of them has to do with the connection between perceptions of democracy and the actual integrity of electoral processes in particular states. And the second has to do with thinking about how to encourage citizens to mobilize in order to improve electoral integrity, democratic performance, and to encourage greater space for civic participation. So what I'm going to show you is just some data related to those questions to sort of put a frame on it. So what you're looking at here in this plot, the x-axis is coming from the Americas Barometer. It is a measure of support from public opinion surveys of democracy, okay? The y-axis is VDEM's Electoral Integrity Index, so this is coming from largely the combination of expert views run through a model to help link these people's perspectives to each other across many different contexts. I don't want to make a causal claim here, but the first point to make is that there's a connection between what people think and what it looks like when we try to objectively observe the integrity of electoral processes. So I put that up there just to stress that the work that you're doing and the conversations that we're having here are related to, this is important. It's an important set of conversations to have. The second, this is from LAPOP's America's Barometer, and these are measures of tolerance for military coups under high conditions of corruption. So you can see a pretty substantial variation in the region from Jamaica at the top, where the support is almost 60%, down to Uruguay, where that's something like 23%. This is in the latest survey. But just to put this in a little bit of historic, well, it's not much of a history, a short historical time frame, this is what the trend looks like across the region over time, beginning in 2004 and ending in the current period. So at the regional level, the support for coups is dropping, but of course there's tremendous variation across states. Third, let me just talk about one of the more interesting things I think that's come out of some of the work my colleagues have done at VDEM, thinking about 10-year changes. So beginning in looking at data on a number of concepts from 2008 and comparing those levels of those concepts in 2018. So what you'll see on the y-axis is basically a count of the number of countries where there was a significant improvement in, for example, whether there were local elections or regional elections, the cleanliness of elections, for example, right? Whether there's equal access for candidates. This y-axis is counting up the number of countries where there was an improvement. The x-axis is counting up the number of countries where there was a decline in these measures. So the thing to focus on in the plot is that the good news, if there's good news to be shared, is that there's been improvement with respect to the formal provisions related to holding elections, right? But at the same time, there's been, these are global statements. There's been a decline in many of the features of democracy that give meaning to the elections that we hold. So if you want to think about, for example, that red dot there in the bottom right quadrant, that's a measure of how careful politicians are in driving an informed deliberation about important political matters. Right? That is one of the things that seems to have been, as I suspect if you've been following the news, recently we have evidence as well that has been declining, even as we've been doing a better job globally in providing people with the right to vote. This just picks up on the same theme, and of course, I'm pretty far away from this, as my colleague yesterday said, or earlier, I can't read the thing from here. But basically what the red pieces are measures of sort of polarization in society, and then a whole series of more sort of granular measures of the particular kinds of deliberation we're hearing from national political leaders. For example, the extent to which political candidates give reasoned, careful answers in political debates to questions posed by their rivals. So again, this is one of the things that's been declining over the last 10 years. Okay, I'm going to apologize for this slide. I threw this in here. You're going to be looking at it thinking, what is going on? So I'm going to try to tell you a little bit what to do with this. I've circled the thing I'd like you to focus on. The reason I put this on here is because I thought it might be helpful to frame the importance of this deliberation regarding the development of robust civil society organizations and their protection and encouragement. What you're looking at comes from an analysis of democratic regime survival, where we took basically a look at every country around the world starting in 1900. Okay? And what we're going to do is with those countries try to estimate their hazard for democratic failure, which is to say, we're trying to predict the probability that a country will collapse democratically, given that it's survived up to the point, that the particular year in which we're looking at it. Those dots are ratios, and I'll tell you how to interpret them. Anything to the left is something that is making the hazard for democracy go down, which is to say, stabilizing the country. Things to the right, and I'll talk about the top row in the next session, are things that are increasing the rate at which we would predict the democracy is failing. A robust civil society is one of the strongest predictors of regime survival. So when we're thinking about how to encourage civil society participation in democracy, we are talking about a very fundamental thing, and I just want to encourage us to recognize that and think about it, and in particular in the following context. So these are just plots. If you go to VDEM's website, I pulled these down about an hour ago. These are just plots of particular measures. You can use the web-based tool to pull them down yourself very easily. These are three countries in Europe, Turkey, Hungary, and Poland, with respect to our civil society index. And the pattern you'll notice on the far right of the plot should seem familiar to you. It's a period in which the measures are suggesting that there's been an erosion of the ability of civil society to participate in the democracy. Here is a couple, just as a sort of a proof of concept. This is what it looks like in this region with a couple notable cases. So the point here is just with a couple snapshots to recognize that this is an extremely important topic to be thinking about. We have just a large number of studies suggesting that there are very good reasons to trust our instincts, right? The things we know without looking at the numbers tell us that they're real, or they at least reflect what we know from our lived experiences. And we know that this is a period in which civil society is being attacked in many parts of the world, and it gives us a sense of purpose, I hope. So thank you so much for your ears, and I look forward to our continued conversation.
Muchas gracias, Jeffrey. Muy importante, creo ya, ver las gráficas y que aterrizan justo todo lo que nos comentabas sobre la desconfianza de la sociedad civil. Verlo ya en números reflejados levanta preocupación del estado de la democracia actualmente, y con base en eso, pues ahora nos sentaremos en mesas a ver qué soluciones podemos dar. Para ello, le cedo la voz a Gabriela Nones. Ella es especialista en gobernabilidad inclusiva y elecciones en el Buró Regional para América Latina y el Caribe del PNUD, nuestra oficina en Panamá. Es maestra en Cooperación Internacional Descentralizada, Paz y Desarrollo por la Universidad del País Vasco en España y licenciada en Sociología por la Universidad Católica Andrés Bello de Venezuela. Ella nos va a explicar la dinámica que vamos a seguir a continuación. Adelante, Gaby.
Muchas gracias, Sol, y muchas gracias a toda la audiencia por estar aquí participando en esta propuesta que les tenemos. Brevemente les voy a explicar un poco la dinámica que vamos a tener a partir de ahora. No quiero tomar mucho tiempo para que podamos trabajar ya de lleno. Hay 3 mesas, como pueden ver. La primera mesa, que es esta que está acá, va a profundizar sobre los temas legales la mirada desde la justicia electoral y cómo esto puede estar afectando la desafección democrática. Vamos a estar orientados a ver esos candados que sean intentos por colocar candados para asegurar la integridad en los procesos electorales y cómo el acertar o fallar en este proceso puede también estar afectando la percepción que los ciudadanos están teniendo de la integridad de los procesos electorales, pero también de la democracia como sistema. La segunda mesa, que sería esta que está al fondo, va a estar viendo la mirada de la ciudadanía, cómo desde la sociedad civil o desde el ejercicio ciudadano se puede también estar haciendo aportes a la integridad de los procesos electorales y cómo el tener o no esos espacios para este ejercicio ciudadano de vigilancia puede también aportar a la integridad o menoscabar la percepción que estamos teniendo de la democracia y de la integridad de los procesos electorales. Esta última mesa, que sería la tercera mesa, va a estar profundizando la mirada tecnológica, el uso de nuevas tecnologías, el impacto que pueden estar teniendo las redes sociales en la valoración que se está haciendo de la democracia y, de un lado, de los intentos que se pueden estar haciendo desde el uso de tecnologías para aportar a la integridad de los procesos electorales, pero también desde los retos que plantea estas nuevas tendencias, esta vida online que se encuentra o se desencuentra con la vida offline en términos de regulaciones que existen o no existen para asegurar transparencia, libertad e integridad en los procesos. Vamos a tener traductores que nos van a estar apoyando en las tres mesas, entonces tampoco sientan que vamos a tener una limitación de idioma. La mesa de tecnología la va a estar liderando Niall, la mesa de ciudadanía va a estar apoyándonos Jeff y en la mesa legal va a estar Sol. Van a encontrar unas preguntas que tienen que contestar. Hay unas instrucciones, principalmente elegir un relator que luego nos va a compartir la discusión de la mesa. Hay una invitación a identificar recomendaciones para que esto pueda ser transmitido a toda la plenaria de la Red Mundial de Justicia Electoral y que podamos tal vez tratar de que esto sea incorporado como una agenda de trabajo con mayor continuidad de cara a la siguiente asamblea que tengamos. Entonces ya sin más, los invito a que se unan en principio a la mesa que les interese más desde el punto de vista de la temática y allí ya pues profundizar en la discusión. Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So the first question is, how is the perceptions of election processes with respect to their the evaluation of democracy and how the Desafeccio?
So the relationship between perceptions and integrity.
Yeah, so you put that slide up earlier that was just showing the correlation between the two things. So this is really asking, what is it about either the perceptions of the way that it's affecting any support or vice versa?
Do you think that tribalism now, are people really demonizing the other side? Is also getting to they lose people assume it's like they're you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't know.
Elections are the running of elections. Quintessential symbol of democracy. That's that even though democracy. So more than so elections are not properly conducted, and there's fraud, there's irregularities, or perceived irregularities. There's two levels: the objective and the subjective. So you have the irregularities and perceived irregularities. For some, losing side saying, hey, I don't want it. Of course, that will affect not only the election, but the institution running the election. People tend to put together parliament.
Can I tell one quick story just to maybe see how the voice goes? Because I'm skeptical. Just a little bit about the connection between perceptions of left and integrity. So the story is that as a younger person, I learned about electoral management. Because I grew up in the United States. We put our elections that had people who were actually for candidates in my state. So I had to do a Mexico learn. And I was in Mexico City for 2008. And then returned to my country for the Bush versus Gore presidential election. And arrived my first job in Tallahassee, Florida, where the legal conference was set. And it reminded me of the electoral process was basically amateur. Votes aren't really properly counted. And I think we all recognize that in a certain sense. Like, yeah, some things that don't work here don't work there, but generally, I don't know if generally. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah. So I just wonder whether how essential that is in some ways.
Pew actually is out of how much trust there is in the US, like it just going, it used to be 60%, now it's like,
Sure. I don't know how much it's like realizing the electoral system doesn't, well, the counting the votes is important versus like the system itself is
It's a matter of perception.
I always say the best way to have it when there's somebody wins by
The opposition was
or whatever, yeah, and then everybody accepts the result, even if it's a character. Yeah.
No sé cuántos países. The perception usually comes into play when regardless of but obviously the one who address so perception. And it's like, oh, push. They took them very yeah, but
puede pedir los ciudadanos cuando sus derechos van a estar afectados. La totalidad de los electores ciudadanos
is that we are also talking about the balance of role there. If you are too rich, and I'm too rich, and I give you formally in the election, and say that in the election we have to stand with
las personas que quieren
then my perception is that you are throwing me into something completely
lo dejan en la propia delegación.
I cannot accept
Es obligación del órgano administrativo el permitirme.
It's very
No se las partes
Can I respond to that? It tracks some numbers. I think it may be having trouble with tracking. I think what generated the
Eso se
phenomenon
subsana
earlier about having certain poorly run management, but people accepted it was exactly what that is to say. My sense is that there was a perception that it was fair.
Pero yo quiero hacer
But it was like, it wasn't fraudulent, right? So the perception was it was not well run, it was fair. Yeah.
But now
las organizaciones políticas
gets you on the other side of the way. And one of the complaints is very
Entonces van a hacer
each time the opposition
hacen
wins,
los estatutos.
the opposition will come up at 80%
Yes.
more, saying that it was fair. And each time the government wins, it's 60%. It's so that I report from the book you read. So one of the constant
Los procesos electorales tienen etapas absolutamente definidas con absolutamente definidas. Si yo voy a ser candidato, sé cuáles son las
everybody was saying wonderful.
la campaña
One, Mrs.
día de las elecciones, la etapa de partir y a partir de ahí mi igualdad. Si yo soy candidato, mi responsabilidad es estar atento a lo que pasa en mi
because in those
nosotros también podemos tener audiencias vía
Muslim who were expert from
esa práctica.
proceso se hace it was fair.
But the law though said that you can't
Porque eso nos
citizen to be registered. So on the face of it, this is systemic manipulation and legal practice. On the face of it, it seems fine, but the purpose is to target sort of
So when we discussed about integration, and we looked at a situation where you have a legal barrier, legal for people not to join the X, then
What's the legal claim, the level playing field?
so that is my last comment on that.
Entonces no es extraño que yo llegue a tener
We still have to
causas
think how we are going to live that kind of
confusión de la misma persona.
because everybody say that it's
Las causas que una persona
you
dice
don't have to
procesos
be
por
honest, you have to
no ser
be
intencional campaña de toda la actividad. Entonces ahí tenemos
because
que
without building and who is going to
los
build
principales, tengo la lista de los
what
si alguien que algún ingenio acepta
to be the
¿qué hacemos nosotros?
civil
Nos
society
llegan las causas
today
donde denunciamos abuso y
more of the raising fund machine.
y es algo
Then
con trabajo
they were needing money. If
Claro, no,
other
no.
ones, they cannot. And in many
Pues,
ways,
tres manos,
especially in Mexico, if you accept money from the US contracts,
pero creo que también vale poder hacer esa
no, through IRI, NDI,
es que a
then
nadie le gusta
there
perder.
is suspicion.
La mayor propaganda
And then you have suspicion before you can say that
Quito por
it
solo
will be
significa que necesitas
that will be very
entonces, si la justicia federal no tiene procedimientos absolutamente legalmente socializados, la gente presenta sus identidades sabe, está perfectamente voy a perder mi pago aquí nada más. En el el tema está en con la participación de redes para hacer si quieren
National Tribunal de Residencia. They also investigate the position the accusation that over the elections were rigged. That has been very strong institution, very efficient. If these institutions are not exclusive, then they are fairness that is not against everything.
Por eso es que
You remember when we started in 2000? You remember that? I was sent by Texas to NBC. The fight stopped in and because why? Because 9 o'clock in the evening, people were asking the chairman of the Electoral where are the results and why the journalists stopped giving the results and not the commission. And he said, and he told me, he said, look, somebody is cooking something. That's why then it's lower. So people then and 12 came 1,500 people. Why would you say that? He said, well, sometimes centrifugal. Somebody was cooking because the president was but that's where I think his perception comes from every
And so they organized the election based on the perception rather than so it's really dangerous actually. Precedent is perception of fraud and the ability not to prove the narrative that fraud is enough to no, it's not because then they think it should this precedent
Let me introduce real quickly. There's only a few minutes left of this forum. So we'll give you the floor just here, but just to know we got
I just wanted to say that to find in the realm of human activity. For example, if I go to a new country, right, and I don't know whether the water from I don't know whether I so let's say I go to Mexico, and I don't know I'm able to drink the water from the tap. I don't know whatever. So there's 2 ways to find out. You can have chemical analysis. It's looking at levels of sodium and minerals, there's lead or whatever. Or, you're trying to it's fine. So that's what has to be addressed in the so when you drink the water, it melts. And in order to find erroneous you're not going to make it throughout the streets, we'll start turning to
so fast because if you produce the evidence you not manifest you can't. That's the challenge.
when you have the time that transparency is out.
rumors, especially Kenya, 2017, Mexico 2006.
The Ukrainian war based on floods. So it's the same. They couldn't resolve. A lot of them were frivolous.
You have almost every much of your business to visit. It means that you have the strong personality, a good religious suspicion. You have to have very control mechanism appointed and so on. And you have but then you have the second grade. It's one of them. And among these things, we know about that things the electoral authorities can control. The result, as we say, the perception of fairness, if they lose, but then you cannot control that, because that's the issue of the work. And we only can say that it's true, that if a vote is free, no, it's fair, but if it's free, you cannot predict it. And you have to accept the result of
Scholars look at the perception of fairness in relation to the market.
Problem is that like there's a bunch of interesting papers on so that complicates the there's a bunch of stuff. There's a guy we don't think
becoming closer, and so I think
what are those? What are we doing? Once we have all the necessary verification, what role do the push before thing would the push before thing would not just end in the way that it did. Ignored so what role do the candidates and parties play in this? That's what democracy is. That's right. That's right.
Mechanism for resolving it.
So it means one thing. It means one thing. The perception also comes from the culture of the leader. Without that, he will not accept.
In fact, this is
Secondly, the British Army, I asked the chairman of the One thing, going back to your presentation, you have from the beginning, one thing, that the communication between the smartphones
You know, I mean, just that suggestion was and people would say there's, they would not, that would erode trust in business. There's no
That's what you do, but you self-select. Randomly assigned.
Hola. May I invite all the tables to send the reporter to share the discussion you had in your table? ¿Les puedo por favor pedir al relator de la mesa pasar aquí a contarnos un poco la discusión que hemos tenido? The technology is getting behind. If my boss called me. Bueno, parece que estuvieron intensas las discusiones, los vi muy animados. Algunos dijeron, recién está poniéndose bueno esto, recién estamos entrando en materia y ya nos piden terminar. Vamos a dar entonces espacio a que los relatores de cada mesa nos puedan compartir un poco cómo fue la discusión a lo interno en torno a estas tres temáticas: tecnología, desde la mirada de las nuevas tecnologías y redes sociales, la mirada de la sociedad civil y de la ciudadanía, y la mirada de el componente legal y el sistema judicial y la justicia electoral, a ver cómo estamos viendo la desafección de la democracia, cómo estamos impactando y qué podemos hacer para un poco contribuir a la integridad de los procesos electorales desde cada uno de estos actores o ámbitos. No sé qué grupo querrá comenzar. Ok. Sociedad civil, ¿no? Ciudadanía.
Sí, ciudadanía, but I'm going to switch to English because most of the discussion was in English and my notes are in English, so I'll give you some time so you can change to that.
So basically, I know that we had to have some recommendations at the end, but I'm afraid we don't. We just have, I think, more questions than proposals. But I think in those questions we can find some leads. So we started discussing what was a correlation, or the relationship between the integrity of elections and the overall support for democracy, and what's the connection between the first and the second. We first mentioned that there are basically two levels. One is the objective level. It's empirical, has to do with the performance of electoral institutions, the material aspects of it. And the second level has to do with, it's a subjective level, has to do with perception. Because we didn't say it like this, but basically elections not only have to be free and fair, but they have to be perceived as free and fair. Because sometimes you can have a technically perfect or almost technically perfect election. Mexico 2006 comes to mind, but the outcome is not accepted for a number of reasons that we discussed in detail at the panel. In other cases, we discussed South Africa in 1994. The election is not so technically perfect. Back then, it was the first time the country held an election, because before that, 2/3 of the citizens were excluded from the electoral roll because of, apartheid. But then, even though there were many flaws and irregularities, the outcome was accepted. So we really understood that perception is the key. And you have to have systems in place to address that perception, so that political parties and key players and citizens feel that they were included, that the fight was fair, and hence the outcome was fair. Then we talked about two other levels in the realm of perception. One, the perception of the electoral process, and then the perception of the campaign and the political competition. One example that was given by Mr. Dong is that, you might have, 5 candidates or whatever, and they're all equal on paper, 5 candidates, 1 election. But what if one candidate is rich and the other one is poor? So they don't have the same resources. They don't have the same access to contacts and resources. So, you have one saying, you all weight the same, but it's not really the case. So you won't accept it. So even if the election administration was super fair, and if you have these kind of imbalances, it just won't work. And that's why we stressed the importance of perception. We also mentioned the case of the US, where perception plays a role, and sometimes you can have some irregularities for the election, and you have gerrymandering, and maybe some of the voting machines don't work properly, but that has to do with incompetence, and okay, there's some incompetence, but it's not fraudulent, and the will of the people is being respected. So it's not easy. So most of our discussion had to do with these things, to find the elements that allow people and political actors and the media and to trust an election. So how to build this perception? So we also discussed losers. Losers' consent is difficult. But anyways, how to build this perception? So we focused on 2 big components: the material elements, the things that legislators or an election management body or an electoral tribunal can do and put in place to have a good election, technically accurate election, transparent mechanisms for the production and distribution of results, super good technology, fearless judges, that are not afraid to apply the law, that are fiercely independent, fiercely impartial, superb voting ink, as the case of Mexico. You can have all these things. But, that's a necessary but not a sufficient condition for having a trusted election. So there are other components, invisible institutions, the work of Kenneth Arrow, that allow us to bolster this perception. And that's the thing, EMBs can control the administration. They cannot control the results, and they cannot control the perception of the people. And we mentioned that for these invisible institutions, It has to do mostly with the political culture, the legal culture of the country. We mentioned Bush versus Gore, where Gore didn't like the resolution of the court, but he respected it. He said, while I don't agree with it, I do respect it. We also talked about the UK, and Mr. Dong mentioned a metaphor, that how do you get always, invariably, the loser to accept the outcome and raise the hand of the winner? And the answer was that he was asking this to an election commissioner from the UK Election Commission, and he said, we've been doing this since 1215, so 800 years ago, when the Magna Carta was first established. So this is, in summary, all the things that we discussed in this panel. So as I said and as I warned, we do not have many answers. We did not have enough time to deal with civil society. We just mentioned that civil society can be a player to strengthen this legal culture of accepting the election, accepting its outcomes. But in summary, elections not only have to be free and fair, but perceived as such. And it's like this old aphorism, not only justice has to be made, but it has to be seen to be made. Yeah.
Did the group identify this as a subject that the global network could advance in the working agenda they have?
Yeah, sure. We didn't get that far, but...
You didn't get that far.
But yeah, I think it's very important in these times of democratic dissatisfaction. I think that's the name of this, disaffection. Because there's so many challenges to democracy nowadays, in the American continent, Venezuela, Nicaragua, but also in the US, and you can go to other countries around the world where democracy is, being challenged by other movements, by leaders that don't follow these liberal ideas, these liberal institutions. So I think one of the things that can be done, and by electoral management bodies and electoral dispute resolution bodies, is to take care of what they do and do it the best they can. This will have an impact on the overall support to democracy, and of course engage with civil society, which can replicate the message and engage with citizens. But of course we also have to take into account that this is just one institution or one set of institutions from a whole a set of institutions universe. You have parliaments, you have the judiciary, so it has to be a joint effort. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much to this group. Who wants from the legal perspective and the judiciary system?
Sí.
Bueno, nosotros hablamos, y coincido con Miguel Ángel, no nos dio tiempo y entonces había muchísimos temas en los cuales podemos profundizar. Lo que más comentamos fue qué puede hacer la justicia electoral para responder a la ciudadanía, ¿no? Y en primer lugar coincidimos justamente en lo que mencionó Miguel previamente en el tema de la percepción. La ciudadanía tiene una percepción, que fue parte de las conclusiones que tuvimos, hay una falta de credibilidad en las instituciones electorales. Entonces, parte de los planteamientos fue qué se puede hacer, ¿no? Para que la ciudadanía conozca y se transparente el papel y el trabajo de las autoridades electorales. Entonces, en primer lugar, dentro de nuestras conclusiones de qué necesitan hacer estas autoridades en temas de justicia electoral fue tener claridad legal, cumplir con garantías básicas y tener se habló de una homologación de procesos que puede haber a nivel mundial incluso. Después hablamos de la importancia de la transparencia y rendición de cuentas en las instituciones, la importancia de que los resultados sean accesibles a la población. Esa es una tanto recomendación como reflexión. En el Tribunal Electoral en México hay un fuerte compromiso con la accesibilidad No solamente como, no sé si algunos estaban en la última ponencia del magistrado de la Mata, en que se habló de accesibilidad para las personas con discapacidad, la importancia de que las sentencias también sean accesibles para representantes de pueblos y comunidades indígenas. Hablamos también de las limitaciones físicas a las que se enfrentan la ciudadanía para llegar a ingresar una solicitud de juicio ante los tribunales. Entonces, en general, limitaciones, ¿a qué se enfrentan ante la justicia electoral? Limitaciones físicas, limitaciones en materia de lenguaje. Otro tema que discutimos es la importancia de dar capacitaciones, que los actores políticos conozcan el proceso electoral y que de esta manera sepan en qué momentos pueden acudir a la justicia electoral. Entonces, el tema de la información y la comunicación nuevamente, ¿no? Hablamos de la posibilidad como una de las propuestas de, por ejemplo, juicios orales, juicios electrónicos, perdón, que se puedan ingresar los juicios para que la gente no tenga que trasladarse, no tenga que estar al pendiente de los tiempos que tienen que dar respuesta, etcétera, etcétera. Entonces, también hablamos de esos temas. Y finalmente, también de la importancia que tiene para las instituciones electorales de dar seguimiento a las sentencias, que las sentencias que se emiten realmente se le dé seguimiento a que sean cumplidas y de esta manera se puede generar muchísimo mayor confianza en la población, ¿no? Porque una de las cuestiones que se ha detectado, al menos en el caso mexicano, la discusión fue muchísimo más regional, realmente, mucho más centrada en América Latina por las características del grupo, pero el tema es no se da un seguimiento muy puntual al cumplimiento de las sentencias y eso es muy importante para que las instituciones tengan credibilidad. Entonces, bueno, básicamente eso, nos faltó muchísimo tiempo para seguir discutiendo, creo que es un tema muy profundo y tienen que haber muchos más aspectos. Se me olvida uno más que mencionaba Madi, nuestra colega del Tribunal Electoral, y es la importancia de buscar mecanismos alternativos de resolución de conflictos y que la gente de diferentes grupos, por ejemplo, en el caso de México destacan experiencias en temas de grupos, poblaciones indígenas, de cómo crear mecanismos para tener diferentes posibilidades de acceso a la justicia electoral y no los oficiales que se conocen, ¿no? Entonces, básicamente sería eso.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a este grupo. El grupo tecnológico.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, el grupo partió de la exposición de Neil que mencionó el impacto de la tecnología en la comunicación política o el impacto de la tecnología en los procesos electorales en sí mismo. Nosotros nos detuvimos exclusivamente en el impacto de la tecnología en la constitución, en la comunicación política. Y la conversación estuvo dividida básicamente en dos partes. Primero, tratar de comprender cuál es el problema que supone el impacto de la tecnología en la comunicación política y segundo, algunas ideas para afrontar ese problema. Por supuesto, no tuvimos suficiente tiempo, como le pasó a los otros grupos, pero voy a tratar de resumir lo que discutimos. Frente al problema, claramente la comunicación política se enriquece con las nuevas tecnologías, eso no hay discusión, eso no lo mencionamos, digamos, hay grupos que están por fuera de la deliberación política que han podido ingresar gracias a las nuevas tecnologías. Nos detuvimos más bien en el impacto negativo, en el lado, en la mala noticia, no en la buena, la mala noticia de esas nuevas formas de comunicación política en la esfera digital. Su impacto en la integridad del proceso electoral, en la libertad del elector y en la construcción o en la destrucción del ágora, de esos espacios de deliberación en donde era posible que las mejores ideas pudieran rebatir a las peores ideas y que ahora se están viendo minados por la existencia de cámaras de eco. Entonces sí, hay un problema para la comunicación política por la irrupción de la tecnología. Dividimos este problema en cuáles son los grandes temas que se debían abordar en este asunto y en qué, y para efectos de la regulación, las plataformas o los formatos en los cuales se produce esa comunicación política. Todo esto para efectos de la regulación. Frente a los temas de la regulación que eventualmente debería existir. Frente a los temas se plantearon 5 temas problemáticos. El discurso de odio, las noticias, la desinformación o las llamadas noticias falsas o peor todavía, el llamado deepfake, que son los videos falsos, el pago de avisos, especialmente en periodos vedados en las leyes nacionales, como los periodos de silencio antes de la elección, el microtargeting y el uso de datos privados y las interacciones no humanas que tergiversan la comunicación política. Son los grandes 5 temas que identificamos como temas que deben ser afrontados porque pueden afectar nuevamente la integridad del proceso electoral, la libertad del elector o ese espacio, ese ágora de deliberación plural que es fundamento de la democracia. Y estos 5 temas deben ser estudiados de manera distinta dependiendo del formato que adopte la comunicación política determinada. WhatsApp es distinto a Facebook, Facebook es distinto a Twitter, Twitter es distinto a Instagram. No podemos tratar de la misma manera a todas las plataformas y a todos los formatos. Un problema de desinformación puede tener una solución para Facebook que simplemente no es aplicable a WhatsApp. Entonces, no solo tenemos que tener en cuenta los temas, particularmente estos 5, sino los formatos a través de los cuales se produce esa comunicación política. Esto como un diagnóstico de cuáles pueden ser los grandes temas y, digamos, y los asuntos que deben ser tenidos en cuenta al momento de una regulación. Y entonces la pregunta que surgió es, ¿regular sí o no? ¿Y quién y cómo? Y un poco hay un consenso en la mesa de que, pero ustedes me corrigen si estoy equivocada, de que hay verdaderamente un problema, de que la regulación tiene que ser respetuosa de los estándares de libertad de expresión, pero debe existir alguna regulación, por lo menos frente a estos 5 tipos de asuntos que acabo de mencionar. Ahora, la regulación debe ser una regulación fruto de un acuerdo multisectorial y ojalá supranacional, porque Internet es una red global, abierta y descentralizada. Entonces, cualquier regulación nacional puede tener o ser ineficaz de una parte o romper la arquitectura de Internet de otra. Entonces, la regulación debería ser multisectorial y supranacional, y ahí nos detuvimos en el problema de las noticias, de las llamadas noticias falsas o desinformación. Y me parece que hay un acuerdo en la mesa que el Estado no puede tener la llave para definir lo que es verdad y lo que es mentira, pero que la desinformación produce un daño sobre los valores que yo mencioné, sobre la integridad del proceso electoral, la libertad del elector y este espacio, digamos, de deliberación. Entonces, alguien tiene que poder hacer algo. Y una de las propuestas que surgió, a pesar de que en la mesa se dijo que era ineficiente, pero tampoco fue muy claro qué otra respuesta puede haber, es la regulación que obligue a la existencia de terceros imparciales que, obviamente en un acuerdo multisectorial, puedan etiquetar la información como una información en disputa o como una información absolutamente falsa. Este remedio, por supuesto, puede funcionar en redes como Twitter o como Facebook, pero es muy difícil que pueda funcionar en una red como WhatsApp. Sin embargo, hay que pensar los remedios para WhatsApp porque creo que muchas de las personas que estamos acá sabemos lo que pasó con el uso de WhatsApp en elecciones como la de Brasil o eventualmente en elecciones como la de México. Entonces, la idea es que exista un tercero imparcial que pueda ayudar, como por ejemplo un network de fact-checkers que pueda ayudar a definir cuándo la información está en disputa o es absolutamente falsa. Y finalmente podría ser una decisión, esto no lo dijo la mesa, lo añado yo como, pero hago el disclaimer, los estándares internacionales de libertad de expresión, el relator de Naciones Unidas y el relator de la Organización de Estados Americanos han propuesto que el único órgano que puede ordenar sacar una información, no porque sea falsa, sino porque además de ser falsa, produce un daño en un bien jurídico tutelado, es un juez de la República después de un debido proceso. Pero si la idea de un tercero imparcial es lenta, la idea del juez de la República es todavía más lenta. Entonces, por lo menos para evitar daños, impactos rápidos en el proceso electoral, pues lo único en lo que pensamos por ahora es en la idea de este tercero imparcial no estatal, a pesar de que también el remedio judicial existe previa el debido proceso. Eso es lo que yo diría y espero haber recogido todo lo que se dijo en la mesa.
Muchísimas gracias. Si entiendo bien, hay dos recomendaciones que pienso que, según lo que mencionaste, que discutieron en la mesa, se pudiese rescatar para presentar a la Asamblea. Una sería estudiar más el fenómeno, entenderlo un poco mejor desde estos 5 puntos que identificaron como puntos críticos, y avanzar en mecanismos para la construcción de consensos en torno a lo que este estudio, este entendimiento del proceso pueda dar luces a la hora de construir mecanismos legales que puedan un poco atender.
Entender el fenómeno desde el punto de vista de los temas y de las plataformas, de los formatos.
Sí,
y
entendiendo
2,
la distinción.
Profundizar el diálogo multisectorial.
Multisectorial y subnacional.
Para adoptar remedios porque efectivamente hay un daño sobre bienes jurídicos tutelados por el proceso electoral.
Bueno, ya con esto agradezco la participación de todas las personas aquí presentes, el compromiso y el engagement que hubo durante la discusión, a las 2 personas que contribuyeron con inputs a la discusión, a Jeff y a Niall por sus provocadoras ideas, a Sol, por supuesto, por esta invitación a crear esta mesa y también por la moderación y por haber facilitado la mesa legal. Y ya con esto, pues, damos por concluida esta sesión. Creo que ya toca pasar a la plenaria. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.